not a top 10 running back room. I think CBS Sports might have overlooked what Michigan has. Let's break it down right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. First, we're going to talk about Michigan being snubbed from the CBS Sports running back room rankings, which is honestly egregious, especially when you see some of the other teams that are ranked. Then we're going to get into On3's rankings of Kyle Whittingham in segment 2 and Bryce Underwood in the Big Ten in segment 3. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because organizations matter. Operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. CBS Sports Blake Brockmeyer put out a top 10 running backs rooms in the country. I pulled that up thinking I'm going to write about Michigan being ranked somewhere in the top 5, and Michigan is not listed whatsoever in what has to be an egregious oversight. There's no way that it can't be, especially when you hear what some of these teams are. I will tell you what they are right now. It's #1, Miami, #2, Texas Tech, #3, Oregon, #4, Louisville, #5, USC, #6, Florida, #7, Missouri, #8, Texas, #9, Ohio State, #10, Georgia. Okay, so I understand Michigan was not phenomenal 2 years ago. But there's a lot of reasons here where I think this is absolutely mind-blowingly stupid. No offense to Blake Brockmeyer. Mind-blowingly stupid is what this is. Because #1, Michigan has, if you're looking at the production, that's one thing. If you're looking at the room, that's another. Michigan has 3 players in this running backs room that are starting caliber in one way or another. Whether it's Jordan Marshall, who is expected to be the bell cow, at one point was the #2 running back on one point he finished, according to one recruiting ranking, I believe it was Rivals, the current Rivals, right, on 3 at the time, as the #2 running back in the country. He only played in 11 games last year. He still had 932 yards, 10 touchdowns, averaged 6.2 yards per carry. You have Savion Hiter, who was by 2 of the 3 recruiting services the #1 running back in the country, who has the look of a freshman who could be a starter and there's a lot of you out there that think that he might take over as a starter by the year's end. I've heard from a lot of you that say that, and some of you might be like, oh, I don't think that. Okay, well, others do. And Bryson Kuzdzal, who only did start one game, the Maryland game, but was essentially the bell cow for more than one game, for a couple games, and still finished 9 games total, 326 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging 4.29 yards per carry. Obviously, Bryce Underwood is also going to figure in and did surpass Bryson Kuzdzal in rushing yards last year. Michigan had the 14th ranked rushing offense in the country. Only Missouri on that list was ahead with Ahmad Hardy. Only one Big Ten team averaged more yards per game, and that's Indiana last year. Michigan did have the highest yards per carry of any team last year. So there's a lot there. I'm going to switch this so I can read this a little bit easier. But it's when you start hearing what some of these other schools were last year, I mean, like, yeah, you could look and say like, oh, there's just so much talent, as if Michigan doesn't have the second-ranked and first-ranked running backs in 2 of the classes, and then has a walk-on that very clearly, like, I remember when Bryson Kuzdzal entered the transfer portal, there were a lot of you that were like, man, he could end up at just about any team in the country and be either a high-level contributor or even a starter based off of what we saw him do. Right? Like, Michigan is, if there's one place the Michigan is absolutely loaded and should be, because we did a whole show on like Michigan, what's the capability of any position group being the best essentially in the Big Ten. there's only one that's like truly unquestionable, essentially, that it's going to be top 3 at worst in the conference, and that's running backs room, and is almost certainly likely to be number 1. And that's, again, the running backs room. Like, you can sit and say, well, maybe the offensive line, there's a chance that the quarterback, I mean, obviously it's going to be hard to outduel Dante Moore and Julian Sayin. We'll get into the quarterback rankings in a bit here. But you can look at certain places and say, okay, corner, maybe they'll be top 3. Everything goes super well. Maybe you see tight end. Hard to envision wide receiver or linebacker being there. Defensive tackle absolutely could be. But like running backs rooms, and that's obviously we're just talking Big Ten, but like running backs rooms, like it's as set as it can be. Michigan's ethos is also to run the freaking football. That's not the case for, like, you look at some of these teams and I'm like, okay, is Oregon going to be run first team? USC is certainly not. And USC's got some talent, but like, is it as talented as Michigan's room? Would you as a Michigan fan trade with any of the aforementioned 10 teams? I would venture to say no. And then you get into production. What did these teams that are listed, what did they do last year? I understand you can get better. But Missouri, Georgia, and Texas Tech to some degree, and not Texas. No, I think Oregon are the only ones on this list that you're like, okay, they had pretty good production. Otherwise, you're looking at Ohio State had the 72nd rushing attack last year. Miami was 77th. Louisville was 59th. USC was 55th. Florida was 91st and Texas was 90th. What are we doing here? That would be like saying like, oh, Michigan's passing attack is one of the best. It's clearly one of the best. Based off of what? If you're doing it like, okay, well, they've got Andrew Marsh and JJ Buchanan, then fine. But like, based off of what? Otherwise, CBS. My former employer, based off of what? Vibes. Ultimately vibes. Oh, but Miami, they've got, what's his name? Cool. That's great. I understand, like, Jordan Marshall did not rush for over 1,000 yards. He did not have 1,400 yards or something like Ahmad Hardy did. Michigan lost Justice Haynes, who was trending and for a long time was with Ahmad Hardy as being they were trading who had more yards, and he is no longer with the program. But like, it's egregious to look at it and say that Michigan is not a top 10 running backs room or likely rushing attack. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that they brought in Jason Beck, who had the number 2 rushing attack each of the last 2 years. So what are you basing it on? Are you basing it on the players that Michigan has? Because we're talking about highly ranked guys, 2 of whom have at least one of them whom has certainly proven himself in 11 games. And despite being injury ridden, is shown that he's one of the best running backs in the conference, if not the country, in Jordan Marshall. One that has all the potential in the world in Savion Hiter, and one that shows that, like, hey, you know what? We can still run the freaking football in Bryson Kuzdzal. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Michigan is the type of team where you would look at it and say, you can throw together their walk-ons and they're still going to outrush a lot of others. But by all means, if you want to look at some of these other schools that aren't going to try to run the football nearly as much, that don't have recruits that are as highly ranked, and sit there and act like you would rather have them than Michigan, then by all means, just do what you do. It just feels absurd to me in every way. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Kyle Whittingham's ranking by Ari Wasserman. Or was this not Kyle Whittingham's Ari Wasserman ranking? No, sorry, that's Bryce Underwood. This one is ESPN. I've said on threes, but it's ESPN's ranking of Kyle Whittingham. I think that there's some interesting things here, especially as it pertains to what Michigan could do this year. So let's get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, the biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked in to every match, with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. What I love about these tournaments, you can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. And now on top of all of that, you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Get your daily Michigan fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link on the show notes or go to LockedOnWolverines.supercast.com to claim your free trial. All right, ESPN put together a Kyle Whittingham. Well, they put together a ranking of the top coaches, the top 10 coaches in college football, not just the Big Ten. Kyle Whittingham comes in at number 9. He's ahead of Mario Cristobal and Kalen DeBoer, who was a lot of people's odds-on favorite. But he had just an overall record of 177.88. He ended up getting 17 points in this in this thing. There was 2 people who voted. One of them had him at number 6 overall, and Adam Rittenberg, who's a friend of mine, and Mark Schleybaugh had him outside of the top 10. So this is what it says. I didn't put all of what they had to say, but just the numbers to know. If you can't beat him, hire him. Since the 1978 FBS-FCS split, Whittingham is the only FBS coach to face Michigan at least 3 times and have an undefeated record, 3-0. His teams beat Michigan in 2008, 2014, in which I was at that game, the impromptu wet t-shirt contest, and 2015. Whittingham's 177 wins are the most in Utah history. Only one other coach at Utah eclipsed 100 wins. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So, yeah, it's, I think Kyle Whittingham, I think by virtue of being considered one of the best head coaches in college football, it is interesting this offseason to see so many people. And I understand I have Michigan at 9-3. There's a lot of others that have them at 8-4. Very few have them below that. Michigan's over-under is at 8.5. I understand that probably informs a lot of people on how they're going to kind of set up what they think Michigan's going to do or not do. Obviously, it is a tough schedule. But if you have who is widely considered to be one of the best coaches, last year his ranking was number 9 as well when he was at Utah, you would think that, considering that Michigan went 9-3 last year in the regular season, and yes, 7-5, but 8-5 overall. The year before, beat Ohio State, beat Alabama, with Sharon Moore, who was not anywhere. He wasn't even sniffing these lists. Like in the Big Ten, he was considered to be, I think, like 15th, 14th, maybe 16th, something like that, even after beating Ohio State and Alabama in 2024. And yet you would think that someone that actually has a track record that is, like, I understand, like Mark Schleybaugh said, oh yeah, but he had 4 straight 4-loss seasons. One of those ones, he did win the Big 12 still, or not Big 12, the Pac-12 at that time. He beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game in 2021. And Mario Cristobal led Oregon, which led to Dan Lanning, actually, because Mario Cristobal took the Miami job. And the next year he beat, if you remember, Lincoln Riley led USC that just had to beat Utah. It got a reprise, got to face Utah, just had to beat Utah. And they were in the college football playoff. Didn't happen. Instead, Ohio State ended up being in as a result. The Caleb Williams Heisman Trophy winning USC Trojans could not beat Kyle Whittingham in Utah, despite that team having a lot of talent and the Heisman Trophy winner going up against a team of mostly 3-stars. So you're telling me that coach that was able to do that was able to beat that team, that was able to beat a superior Oregon team that launched Mario Cristobal back to his alma mater, you don't think that team can do some damage? I don't really know what to tell you, but to me, it feels like there's a lot of positive that Kyle Whittingham can do even in 1 year. Now, will it take him more than 1 year? I mean, he says that, like, no, I'm not trying to wait around. I'm not trying to We're trying to win now. We're not trying to take 3 years to build this thing a la the NFL. But Adam Rittenberg had him at number 6, has a lot of faith in him. But it's curious to see like what people think Kyle Whittingham's going to be able to do. And this is kind of part and parcel, like, especially when I hear like, yeah, we love the defensive line. We love Bryce Underwood. They're like, I understand there's, people like to rumor monger. I'd say it's hurtful to the program when you just start trying to create things, create narratives. But you look at it and you say, okay, he loves what he has. Of course he does. He hasn't had a team like this ever. And he's done more with less. So I think it portends to a really positive potential outcome for this Michigan football team. And he beat Michigan in 2008. Okay, Rich Rod's first game. 2014, at that time, Michigan was not really seen as, I remember driving to the game and listening to the late, great Pat Caputo, who was not exactly a lover of all things Michigan. He's like, Michigan's going to stomp these guys. And it didn't happen that way. I know, because I was there. 2015, Jim Harbaugh's first game ended up going, 9-3 that first season, 10-3 overall. Could not beat Kyle Whittingham in Salt Lake City. So, again, Michigan had a more talented teams in any, maybe not in 2008, but like certainly in 2014 and 2015. And Michigan still should have won that 2008 game. So I think that he could do a lot of really good stuff this year. All right, let's get into the Bryce Underwood ranking. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. It's just like how Michigan recognized they needed some stability. And they went out and got Kyle Whittingham, who's a guy that can do more. It wasn't just a reactionary move. The organization had a vision, it stuck to it, and now you're seeing the results because everyone is working from the same playbook. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. All right, Ari Wasserman on 3 put together a list of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Bryce Underwood did crack the top 10, despite what a lot of you might think otherwise. Ari is not some lover of Michigan either. He and I got into it some years ago. I have utmost respect for him, even though we might disagree on some things here and there. But he has Bryce Underwood at number 7 overall of the 18 Big Ten starting quarterbacks. I think that's a fair ranking. And we're going to read what he had to say and we'll react, but we'll do that momentarily. I think that when you look at those who are ahead of him, Dante Moore and Julian Sayin, I'm going off the top of my head here. I'm just trying to remember everybody. And that's a little easier said than done. Jaden Mayava, I believe, was number 3. You had I remember numbers. I think Josh Hoover might have been number 4 or 5, something like that. Rocco Becht was 6. I'm missing one who was in there. But I know a lot of Michigan fans, you feel a lot of consternation and what have you. But like, again, he is an upper echelon quarterback in the conference at the very least. He is ahead of Nico Iamaleava at UCLA, who was at one point the number 3 quarterback in the class as a 5-star. So I think that's fair. Like, I don't think he should be higher. I don't really think he should be lower. I think there's a lot of revisionist history that comes into like what he did last year. And I think that, it's pretty clear that he's still one of the best quarterbacks that you can have. Maybe not overall. We'll see if he can get you to the mountaintop, but when it comes to just at least having a good, decent, stable quarterback, even as a true freshman, he delivered enough. Was it a phenomenal year last year? No, kind of to be expected. both because he's a freshman, first year playing college football, also wasn't helped by his receivers. So here's what Ari Wasserman had to say about Bryce. Bryce Underwood recently said he wants to prove himself and the world that he is who he thinks he is. When asked what he thinks he is, Underwood responded, the best player to ever come out of Michigan. Those comments are being mocked by opposing fan bases right now, but Underwood never said he is already that. He said he wants to prove that he'll become that. Given the former 5-star's prospect's athletic traits, it seems plausible he could develop into one of the country's most dynamic quarterbacks. As of now, Underwood still has untapped potential. Last season, he showed glimpses, but there's a long way to go before he is elite. Can Kyle Whittingham get the most out of him? I think that's fair, right? Like, again, you want someone that has that mentality. I disagree with my friend Steve about him making those comments. He's not saying I'm the best you've ever seen. He's saying, like, this is what I want to prove. If you don't have lofty goals in his position, then what are you doing? I want to work my way up to middle management. Remember that commercial? I don't even remember what that was from. It's like kids being asked, like, you know, what are your goals in life? I want to work my way up to middle management. No, you don't want that. Sometimes those answers to straightforward questions end up being gotchas without including all of the context. I have no problem at all with what he had to say. And we did see glimpses. We saw glimpses in the spring game last year. Not just glimpses. It was like he was doing the types of things that you hoped he was going to be able to do throughout the season last year, and he didn't. But he still had glimpses. He still has the arm strength, the ability to put a ball where only the receiver can get it. Like, you can sit there and say, well, it wasn't the most accurate, but like, he also didn't have the best receivers that were out there making the best out of those situations. You even saw that in this spring game. So he's got to be able to step into a bit more consistency. Absolutely. But he's got the tools. He has the athletic traits. He has the types of tools and athletic traits that coaches salivate over. And there's a lot of you who would give that up for someone who maybe has a higher floor. Maybe. But does not certainly have a higher floor and certainly has a lower ceiling. I understand the whole point is to win games. And yes, Bryce Underwood's going to have to figure out a way to do that. And this year, he's being thrown into a pressure cooker because of the schedule, because of everything. But I think that last line that Ari says, can Kyle Whittingham get the most out of him? Listen, if there were a group of coaches that you could probably trust, kind of going back to segment 2 to say, like, they're going to be able to get the most out of him. I mean, Kyle Whittingham did what with whom? I understand, like, I saw Ohio State fans laughing, like, Kyle Whittingham hasn't had like a top tier quarterback. He hasn't needed one. Now he has one. He did a lot of work in the last several years with the oft injured Cam Rising. Devin Dampier last year was phenomenal. So when he now has more, can he do more with that? I mean, the track record says yes. And as much as you can sit there and say, 4 lost seasons, but with what? That's kind of like the general theme of the show, but with what? Based on what? He had less talented teams at Utah than a lot of the teams they faced. And like last year, only lost to Texas Tech twice. Some of these other years, like, yeah, you look at losing to San Diego State, not great. But like, again, with like pretty relative equal talent to San Diego State in a lot of ways, despite being a power 4 or 5 program against a group of 5, group of 6, whatever it might be. He's managed to do more with less. Bryce Underwood is more. Former number 1 recruit in the country. A lot of where we are judging what this team is capable of is based off of the negative vibes from the last 2 seasons. And if this was a more exciting coach, I mean, heck, if this was Kalen DeBoer, I think everyone would be like, oh yeah, this is going to go really great. Even though I had some consternation about that myself. Maybe the passing game would have taken a step forward, but the running game probably would have taken a big step back. Now you've got a guy who can do more, can do some things that are exciting, but maybe in a little bit more of a boring way, but that's the same way that Jim Harbaugh won. So I'm excited to see what it ends up looking like. All right. as usual, Friday, we're just keeping it around 25 minutes. So regardless, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We do appreciate it. We'll see you again next week as we inch closer to Big Ten Media Days at the end of the month. Kind of crazy to think Michigan's turn is less than 3 weeks away, 3 weeks from yesterday. And the unofficial start of the season is that close. And fall camp right around the corner. Wild. I want summer to continue. It's how I always feel. But I also am excited for football. Thanks again for watching and listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.